Everyone, and welcome to the session on applications for specialty training and F3 roles. My name is Gemma Sinclair and I am the careers lead for all of the F1 and the F2 doctors across the Northern Deanery. I am recording this session for anybody who wasn't able to attend the session that I delivered in person in the trust. So I've been in the trusts, I've delivered this to everybody. For those of you who couldn't make it, and for anybody who wants to recap, it's available as a recording for you. So this is the exact same session that they've had in the trusts. Also, for some of you, I do need to give a sincere apology because it may be that you're expecting me to be there in person and actually you're getting this recording of me. It's my bad, but I've got a reason behind it. We've merged from Health Education England to NHS England, and during that merge, we've switched emails. There has been some errors with the calendars, and unfortunately in some situations the calendar didn't come across, so I've ended up double booking some trusts. So I absolutely apologise. Sunderland South Tyneside, I know I should be there with you and you're getting this as a recording. I apologise for that. I've made sure that I'll be there in person for the next session for interviews. But yes, so this is available. It's going to be available on the Found Your Place app. If anyone hasn't downloaded this, this is how I'm going to communicate with you for the rest of Foundation. So it's a free app that you can get on any app store. It is just a careers app aimed at Foundation doctors just in our region, but anyone can download it. It's just me who's made it. It's just me who's sending you messages. There's no marketing scheme or anything that's going on with this. So any of the notifications that come through are ones that I think are beneficial for you to know about. From now until December, this is mainly going to be focused on specialty training. So it's September the 13th when I'm recording this. So I've just downloaded I've just put on the specialty recruitment dates. They've just been released into the open domain now. So they're on the calendar. What else do you think? There's a public health day that's coming up. If anybody is interested in public health, that's on there as well as a conference. And there's a few other research events that are on the calendar if you haven't downloaded it before. But so from now until till December, it'll be all around specialty training. It'll be any changes that I see that are happening with recruitment. There was an INT webinar that happened last night. I've just updated some stuff on there and I'll put the link to that recording once it's available. After January, it'll go more towards people who are looking for an F3. So if you've already had this and you downloaded it in F1, you'll know I put loads of job adverts on. So I've just linked in with NHS jobs. I feel like it's just easier for me to be able to set up an email search, get those jobs, and then send you a notification rather than you having to keep checking your emails. So it's a bit of a backup for the jobs as well. And those are the teaching fellows, clinical fellows, trust grades that are available just in this region, not anywhere else. So please download that. Make sure your notifications are switched on because it will help you during F2. Today we're doing applications for specialty training and for F3 roles. Now I totally appreciate that some of you will not be applying for specialty training and will be taking F3s, which is why I've included some stuff around how they shortlist for F3 applications as well. Let's do specialty first then. So I'll just bring this up full screen so you can see it. This is the dates that have just been released on the specialty training website yesterday. There's a slight difference in previous years because the MSRA test, so that multi-specialty recruitment assessment that some of the specialties use as part of their recruitment, is just slightly increasing the amount of time that people can book in and can do that because there's more applicants and there's more specialties who are using it. So that's going to be available in January, but it's just pushed specialty training to opening a week earlier than it usually would. The ACFs go on, so this is all on Oriel. By the way, with Oriel, don't worry about the fact that if you log into it and it's your university email that you're using and you forgot your password and you're trying to reset it and you can't get access to your uni email, just don't worry about it. Start a brand new profile. It makes no difference. If you are using your old profile and you go in when the jobs are supposed to come out and you can't see any of them, the reason will be that within your profile, you will have Foundation ticked. You will need to go into there and then change it to medical and dental specialties and it will come up there. So the ACFs go on there first. They are the specialty training which have research included in it. I have already talked about this in the F1 presentation. So if you didn't manage to attend the F1 presentation, there is a recording of it on the app. If you go into the Information Hub and Careers, there's a Careers Foundation sessions bit, and you can go in there and you can watch that if you want to refresh as to what the ACFs are and how they work. But they open on the 6th of October, and the reason that they're separate is because the ACFs are recruited to regionally. So you would go on and you would apply to whichever deanery it is that you want to go to do your ACF. They then close on the 1st of November, but main specialty will open on the 26th of October, so just before it. It used to be that ACFs would close and then the next day specialty would open. The closing date for specialty applications is the 23rd of November, so just kind of, if you are applying after F2, that's the date that everything needs to be done, finished, signed off and complete, if you are going to put any form of self-assessment on your achievements in there. Long list and short listing starts after that, and then the ACF interviews. Newcastle's ACF interviews are normally in December. The MSRA will take place in January. I'm going to do a session with you on interview prep after this one, where I'll go through what the MSRA is, how you book onto it, where you sit it, what the test looks like, practice papers and all of that stuff. Then we've got interviews starting January, February. Some will tip into March, not many. And you'll know by the 26th of March what you've got. So that would be the point where you would either accept it, or if you were running this as a bit of a mock and you were going to do an F3, that's the point where you would decline it and come out of the process, have your F3 and apply next year. These are the things that you can apply for, so nothing's really changed in terms of the curriculums and what they look like since last year, because they've all just been through curriculum updates. There's a couple maybe just to mention, community sexual and reproductive health. So we do have one post in Northern. We haven't recruited to it for a fair amount of time. I think the person that's in the training course is in ST5. I don't think we'll recruit to it this year. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but there's an issue with where the trainee goes, because New Croft Centre in Newcastle is where we would normally send the trainee for the first part of the training, and it has been taken over by a private organisation to run the sexual health services in Newcastle. So there's a bit of work going on as to what we do with the trainee if we have one in there. But because of that reason, I just don't think that we'll recruit this year for Northern. The child and adolescent psychiatry and the psychiatry of learning disabilities. So it's just to let you know, these are pilots. They're available to run through. You would apply for these if you score high enough in the MSRA test, because that's what psychiatry uses. You can opt to take the training course as a run through, which just means you don't have to go through competitive entry to get a post at higher. And it's always been available in child and adolescent psych for quite a long time. So I haven't even got it under the pilots, subcategory there. But LD got added last year, so that's available as well. The surgical run-throughs, IST, improving surgical training. So they were just a pilot that we were doing where you could get a run-through in one of the subspecialties, higher specialties of surgery. It got paused in 2020, and they were evaluating it to look at whether it was unfair to the people who were coming through core surgical training. There's nothing happened with it. It's not coming back that I know of. So if you're applying for surgery in England, it is just core surgical training. Scotland, I believe, are still running it. T&O and ENT is available in Scotland, so you've got that option there. You can apply for as many of these as you want to. They can't see that you've applied for something else, so you can pretend they're all your first choice if you want. There's a small number of admin people on Oriel who would be able to see that you've applied for several, but there's no reason that they would ever do that. What else do I need to tell you? So for specialty training, the application form is one national application form, and then you preference the geography of where you want to go within the application form at a later stage. I'll show you that when we do the form. I'll just give you some updates. So I'll bring myself back in now so I can talk to you. There's not many updates. It's only September, so there's not that many updates regarding recruitment other than the IMT one that came yesterday. There isn't loads, so I will be putting out quite a lot of them on the app. Basically what I do is during the 3 days when applications opens, I go through everything to see if there's any changes, and then if there's anything significant, I'll put it out as a notification through the app for you. But I thought you might be interested in knowing about this. So interdeanery transfers, the way that they work is, if you're offered a specialty training post and it is the specialty you want, but it's not the geography that you want, you can actually accept it in the March, and then in the July, before you've even started the training, you can apply for an interdeanery transfer. And that would mean that you would start the training in the August, and if you were successful in getting an IDT, you would move in the February, and everything that you'd done would count. So in the past, if you wanted to do an IDT, you had to fall into a specific category, and they were quite strict. There was, disabilities, health conditions, childcare, care and responsibilities was one, so you had to fall into those. But then last year they brought out category D, which was anyone can apply for an interdeanery transfer, and I just thought you might be interested in seeing how many people did that, and because it could be an option for you in the future. So there was 724 applications, 724 people who got specialty training in a place that they didn't want to last year. So it's a bit worrying, isn't it? 41% increase on last year, but that's because they opened up category D. There was 232 offers made, so those people could move, were successful in getting an IDT, and you can see there that most of them got their first choice. Still 500, significant amount of people who are in specialty training and don't want to be based in that place. However, if I give you Northern's figures on that, of those 724, only 22 applications for people that come to the North. Our training is brilliant here, but we have to be realistic that many people want to be based in London. So of those 22 who applied to come to Northern, 15 of them were granted, so they've moved over, or will be moving over in February. And the ones who didn't were, one of them was like an ST6, 7, that was quite niche that we just couldn't fit in. The other ones are GP, so GP and Northern won't accept IDTs because they have a February start date with significant vacancies. So what they say is just go through recruitment and come through in the February intake anyway. But that option's there for you. The advantage of the IDT is that you don't have to go through recruitment again. You still also have another option. So let's say that you applied for medicine in Northern and you got Yorkshire and Humber. So you can apply for an IDT and try and get moved that way. But also, for the first, you could start medicine in Yorkshire and Humber, and then during that first year, you could apply again for medicine. In the application form is a tick box to say that you're already a trainee and you're applying for a transfer of deanery. You would go through recruitment, and if you scored high enough that you would have got a Northern place, you'll move over to Northern, but you would start at IMT2, so you would start at the second year. You wouldn't lose anything from doing that. So you've got that option as well. I would always say do an IDT and then do that as well, because you might not know by the time it comes to recruitment whether or not the IDT is successful. A couple of other updates. So the less than full-time one, this is coming from the National Recruitment Group. They were a bit concerned that some people were being put off at the fact that all of the vacancies are advertised as full-time. There is something that you can tick in the application form to say you want to do it less than full-time, and you just put a well-rounded reason in there. They've got to have a very strong business need to say no to somebody's less than full-time request. I don't know anyone who's been refused less than full-time in Northern. I mean, a lot of our trainees are Northern. A lot of our trainees are less than full-time. So it's not really that much of an issue. I think the concern was that some people were worried about if they ticked less than full-time in the application form, would they be discriminated against? If there was someone who wanted to do full-time, would they take those over them? But it isn't anything that's looked at in terms of assessment. It isn't really looked at until you get a job offer and it goes through to the deanery, who then looks at the logistics of less than full-time. So there's no need to worry about that, but I can understand why some people would, and I think that's probably why they potentially looking at this pilot of releasing some as less than full-time. If you're interested in something as your careers advisor, I would say apply for both. So if it was PEDS and it was less than full-time and there was a PEDS full-time one, apply for both. If you get the part-time one, you've got it. If you get the full-time one, you can just apply for less than full-time anyway. Non-statutory deferrals is quite interesting. So if you want to defer training, meaning you get a training post offer, you want to go and do an F3 and then come back and have that the next year, the only reason that you can defer anything is for statutory reasons. So for a health condition, an illness, maternity, paternity, that's it. There's no non-statutory deferrals. There used to be for GP in the past. So they're thinking about, should they bring this back? Not just GP, but should they bring this back permanently as something that people might want to do? They're looking at sort of the problem that they had when GP did it, was that you would get a GP place, take an F3. During the F3, you would apply for GP again, get a better place, and then ditch the original deferred offer, which obviously caused an underfilled post. So what they're doing is looking at, should they stop people from being able to apply for training again in that specialty whilst they're in their F3. I've put forward from a regional point of view that we should consider shorter term deferrals, because I think, just from my experience of speaking to F2 doctors, was that a lot of people would have preferred to have maybe done like a 4-month deferral or a 6-month deferral, and that would allow them to be able to just, not jump straight into specialty training. A lot of people feeling a bit burnt out by the end of foundation could have a bit of a break, have a bit of a holiday, and then come back knowing that in the short term they have that specialty training post there. So as soon as we get an update on what's happening with that, I'll let you know through the app. ACF recruitment. So at the moment it's regional recruitment. It will move to national recruitment in the future by the looks of it. They were pushing for this for August 24's intake, but the universities fought back. I don't think the unis will win this fight. It will just make it a bit easier for you, because then you'll just do one application form. The MSRA, so the multi-specialty recruitment assessment, that's the SJT clinical knowledge test that some of the specialties use. At the minute, they have some practice papers, but they're not the best. They've been around a while. Some of them are just questions with no answers, which I don't understand how that's helpful. So what they are doing immediately now, the recruitment group, is they have a subgroup who are working on producing a bank of practice papers so that they're readily available for you before you sit the MSRA. I think it comes from the fact that a lot of people are paying privately for organisations banks of questions from online, and it's a bit of a worry about whether they have any or good questions. Well, they don't have anything to do with NHS. No one from here writes them. No one who writes the MSRA questions writes any of those either. So there was a bit of a worry about that, but hopefully we'll have a brand new bank of practice papers for you. And then after that, they are going to do a full mock paper so that you could time yourself going through them. And I'll get them out to you as soon as they're available. I don't have any updates on the Enhancing Junior Doctors Working Live. So remember, in F1 we talked about the main thing is 2 pilots that I'm interested in. The first pilot is what Humber were doing, where training was commutable from your home address. So I'm interested in finding out how that went. And then the other one was about the staggered start dates. So foundation and core starting in August, medicine in September, surgery in October. So we'll see what comes of that, because what's normally the case with NHS is that the pilot is something that they are just practicing and then they'll roll it out, and it'll be interesting to see like the guidance that comes from that. How are we supposed to roll it out? How would that work in Northern? The fill rates. So I'll go through these with you, but I'm going to talk about the UK skills shortage list again first. So in case you didn't see the F1, and for a refresh, in a nutshell, the way that we recruited before 2020 was 2 rounds of recruitment. Round 1 was UK. I'm doing this fast because it's in the F1 presentation. Round 1 was UK EU F2 doctors. Regardless if you were on a visa, you were encountered in round 1 if you were in foundation doctor or a doctor in training, actually. And then, so the jobs went out, interviewed, posts were given, and then whatever was left over went into a round 2. And that was open to any doctor from anywhere to apply. Then in 2020, just before applications opened, medical practitioner went on the UK skills shortage list, which meant that no longer 2 rounds, it was 1 round of open competition. The figures then of people applying went up, and I'm going to show you, I'll bring this full screen so you can see it. I showed you them last year. I've added 2023's figures on. So you've got the specialties that you can apply for, and then this is number of applications UK wide, so for all of the UK posts. So we just look at the emergency med one there, so you get it. 2019, that was round one. So there's 777 people that you can see applying for ACCS emergency medicine or UK EU F2 doctors. And then 2020, that was 6 weeks. Well, before applications opened, it was 6 weeks before then that medical practitioner went on the UK skills shortage list. So there was not a huge awareness of that. So the figures went up, but not massively. But then, as you can see, awareness has increased and the numbers have followed that trend. Again, these figures, some of them I don't like. This is one of them, because there's a lot of stuff going on behind these figures that makes it look a bit more scary than what it is. First of all, it's applications. So it's people who are applying for multiple specialties, people who are applying as a mock who don't intend to take it because they're doing an F3, and also geographical preference isn't taken into account on this. So basically what we're saying is, just come back in so I can talk to you, implications of it. Before 2020, if someone was going to take an F3, the reason they were taking it was either they really wanted a career in medical education and hence were going to do a teaching fellow so they could get the postgraduate certificate, or they wanted an F3 because they didn't know what they wanted to do, or they were just a bit burnt out and they were going to spend some time locum, travelling, non-clinical. Yeah. Most of the specialties didn't shortlist. It was only cardiothoracic and neurosurgery. So even if your MSRA score was a bit low or your portfolio was a bit low because you didn't have loads of achievements under your belt, it didn't really matter because you were still guaranteed an interview. You would go to the interview and your interview performance might outweigh that and balance it so that you ended up getting an all right job offer. Now all the specialties are shortlisting via something. Therefore, I've got loads of people who are being forced to take an F3 because they need to build up their portfolio so that they get a geography that they want for specialty training, or so that they get a specialty training post. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. I'll show you Northern's figures, but really it's 100% fill rate from across the board for most of them. The only one is Obs and Gynae, which we didn't fill, and we just filled peds. Took a while to get that last place filled, but we did get it in the end. In 2019, this was a traffic light system. So when it was round one, we would never fill medicine, peds, obs and gynae, GP, psych, histopathology, depending on the year. Now it's green across it, we're filling it all. I'll just show you the GP figures before I go into a bit more explanation around this. GP was a massive shortage area in Northern. We never filled it. We are 100% filling now. It's the first year we've never had to go back out and re-advertise posts, like for a full recruitment cycle, because we're filling it. GP does still have the 2 intakes as well. So you've got your August intake, and then you can see there the number of posts for the February intake too. I'm just going to come back in for a sec. So in terms of the skills shortage list and what's going on, I don't know how long it's going to be on there for. So there's implications if you're taking F3s and F4s as to what will happen in the future if things change with it. At the moment, as it stands, it's competitive for a lot of specialties. So we do need to build you up quite a bit to make sure that you get the interview. My educated guess with the skills shortage list is that in a couple of years it might come off, because there are 1,500 new medical students coming through the system. They will be in the pot to apply for specialty training it'll be for the August 26 intake that they will be their finished band. They'll be an F2. They'll be in the pot to be able to apply. So an educated guess would be at that point that medical practitioner might come off. If it does, we've then probably got capacity to interview most candidates. So we'll go back to round 1, round 2, and it'll go back to the fact that you'll be guaranteed an interview. And that just means that you won't have to work on the portfolio as much. If you are an international doctor and you're on a skilled visa at the moment, there are implications for you. So if you take an F3 and you're in a clinical fellow, teaching fellow, trust grade, you're in a service role, that's a non-training post, If medical practitioner remains on the skills shortage list during that F3 year, that's fine. It's an open pool of competition. There's no negative implications for you. But worst case scenario, if it comes off the list during that year, we revert back to round 1 and round 2. To be eligible as an international doctor, to be in round 1, you have to be in your training post. You wouldn't be if you were on an F3, so you would only be eligible to apply for positions that were in the round 2. Now, depending on the geography of the country and the specialty, that might not make a difference, because in previous years for round 1, it was always a case that we had posts for medicine, GP, obs and gynae, psych, peds that went into round 2. However, there were posts that never went into round 2. They were always filled in round 1. So radiology, emergency medicine, anaesthetics, public health, ophthalmology, they were always filled in round 1. In that situation, we would have to use a bit of a loophole where you would apply for a training post that was in round 2, like GP or medicine. And in that first year of that training post, you would apply for the specialty that you want to, radiology, and get in that way. So you can still get to where you want to be, but it is a longer and a route where you have to do something that you don't want to for a year to be able to get through it. Now, that's quite complicated, and I'm just got a very short amount of time to be able to explain that. So if you are in that position, you come and have a one-to-one with me and chat it through if you feel like you need to. The ACF figures. So I'll show you these. I was a little bit worried about the ACF because this is how I've kind of judged the competition rates. With recruitment for specialty, I could never see how many people after that 100% fill rate would have come to Northern. It's national recruitment. We don't have any control over it as a region. But with the ACFs, we do. I can see how many people are applying. And in previous years, even though we've been 100% filling for specialty training, our ACF figures, number of applications hasn't really gone up. So I was kind of like, we're not inundated with people wanting to come to Northern. We can see that by the ACFs. I was interested for these figures to come out because this was the first year that I had seen candidates who I would have considered to have quite competitive academic portfolios who weren't being shortlisted for posts. And I was a bit concerned about that. The figures are out. These are them in front of you. They have increased on previous years, not massively, but I have to be honest that the figures have gone up. I think it's probably F2, F3, F4 doctors who are hedging their bets a little bit and keeping their options open. And because specialty has got more competitive, they're now applying for ACFs where they wouldn't have in the past, just to try and be able to secure a post. The ones that you can see there in front of you are the ones that don't have a research theme attached to them. And you remember that they're advertised in a really strange way. So job number 1 is just one post, but the specialty training can be in ENT, urology, or child and adolescent psych. And they change each year, the mix-up of the specialties. There's no rhyme or reason to why they're together. So last year, child and adolescent psych was with GP. If you were going on there, you would be quite happy with that because you know that psych doesn't have loads of applications. GP doesn't normally have loads of applications for ACF. So therefore, it's probably going to be quite a good pot of little people to be able to get through for an interview. I'm sure those 4 people who applied for child and adolescent psychiatry wouldn't have been that pleased when they logged on to Oriel for last year's recruitment and seen that it was mixed with ENT and urology, which are normally not so much urology, but ENT is a very popular ACF training post. So it's just a case of going onto Oriel and having a look and seeing what it's mixed with, or using the NIHR list that comes out from their website. These are the ones that have I'll just bring this up so you can see it, research theme attached to them. They're always less popular than the other ones. I think the reason is mainly, it's loosely attached to that research theme, so I don't really think it should stop people from applying. I think it's more to do with finding the job on Oriel, So I was going to take you through this. This is the advert on Oriel for the ACFs from last year. Now, if you look at that, the bottom one there, palliative, it's on its own. It doesn't have a research theme attached to it. So if you go on Oriel and you search academic palliative and then you put the region that you want, Heaney for, it'll be NHS North East, I mean North Eastern Yorkshire next year, but it was Heaney last year. So if you put that in, it'll come up with that job advert, which is easy to find. But if you see the top one there, the research theme ones are advertised by the research theme. So if palliative was one of the specialties underneath that research theme for platform science, it's not, but if it was, you would search palliative academic Heaney, it wouldn't come up because it's underneath the research theme, it's not underneath the specialty for the job title, which sometimes really confuses people and they find it difficult. The NIHR releases this list and it has all of the ACFs that are available in that year in every geographical area. I'll put that out on Found Your Place anyway. I would go on it, look at Newcastle, look at what's on offer, and then at least you know, right, these things are on offer this year, this is what they're mixed with, these are the ones with research themes, and this is what the research theme's called. And that should help you to know what to look for in Oriel. But if you can't find it, you can always message me and I'll send you the link for it. The other thing that's worth noting with the ACFs is what level you can do them at. So you see palliative, it's available ACF ST1, ACF ST2 or ACF ST3. So you could always apply for palliative at ACF at ST1. You're applying for medicine anyway because you have to as part of the ACF. You have to apply for ACF and specialty. If you didn't get it, you could start medicine. And in the first year of medicine, you could apply for the ACF again at ST2 level. And then if you didn't get it again in the second year of medicine, you could apply for ST3. Not all of them offer that. You have to have a look and see what's after the job title and to see what levels they're available at. And I don't want you to panic thinking, well, how is it fair if I go up against somebody who's already done medicine and is applying at ST3? The way that they shortlist for an ACF is they look at your achievements based on the level of doctor that you are. So they would look at, has this F2 doctor done more research-wise what an F2 doctor would be expected to do? And then same for if it was an INT1 candidate and INT2. So you're not being pitched against each other in that way. It is taken into consideration. So I'm going to go through the application form with you. Now, I totally appreciate this is an application form. This is the part that I have to do within the session. And it's just an application form. I can't jazz it up as much as I can, but it's a form at the end of the day. So what I thought I would do is, I'm just going to come on while I'm talking to you about this. I appreciate that for some of you, you won't be even filling out this application form this year, or you might be doing it as a mock. It's going to be available, the recording, on the Found Your Place app. But if you take an F3, next year's recording will be on there as well. So you'll be able to get the updated version of this session regardless of how many years break that you have. And I just thought, if I do it now with you, you can remember it and you can come back and you can listen to the recording later on. At least it's there. I'm not going to go through every single part of it. It's a form at the end of the day. It's common sense, a lot of it. I'm just going to pull out where people have had issues with it in the past. So I'll put it on full screen so you can see and I'll talk behind it. This I'm not going to do anything with because this is just an application form. It's just your details. The employment section though, I am going to pull out a couple of things. So you need to give the last 3 years of your employment history. Now, if you are an F2 doctor and you're applying, foundation is your 2 years and you can go future up to, the end of F2. But you will need to put in undergrad as well so that they know where you've been for that other year. If you're going to take an F3, that's fine. You just put in what you've been doing. If there's any gaps longer than a month, you'll need to put those in. So don't worry about it. It's not anything to do with assessment. It's to do with like HR and your DBS check and going through all of those things. So if you've been, had a career break, just put that in for more than a month. The other thing that I get asked quite a lot about with this one is who's my employer. It doesn't matter if you put the trust as your employer, the foundation school or the LET. Officially it's the LET, but I get that people get confused about that. So you can put in whichever one you want. It's not going to pull out, you're not going to have your application rejected because of what you've put in that section. Then I've put, this looks so common sense, but honestly when you see the form you'll understand. I've put what you put in the drop down menus for employment because the drop down menus are huge and so complicated. And a lot of people see all of the clinical areas and think that they have to do their rotations. So they're trying to put their rotation dates in and they're trying to select the clinical area, and you don't do any of that. You just do F1 and F2. And that's what you put in there from the drop-down menus, just so that you can understand and you can see it straight away. You don't need to spend any longer time on this than what you have to. If you are less than full-time or out of sync, if the foundation school has said they're not sure if you'll finish on time because you're just out a little bit, then you just put in that you'll finish foundation the day before specialty training starts. If you are out of sync by, or less than full time, which is making you out of sync by quite a bit, it's a bit of a grey area. Technically, you're ineligible to apply because you have to finish foundation by the time you start by the start date of specialty training. But unofficially, I have had loads of people who've applied. If you get through long listing, and some people don't, they get long listed out and that's it. There's nothing we can do. But if you get through long listing, you go to the interview, you get a job offer, and then the deanery will come to you and be like, what's going on? Why are you out of sync? You can't start until November or December. And you talk to them. In some cases, you've then been offered a delayed start date. So I still think it's worth putting in an application form if you're in those positions to see if it gets through the system, and then if you get a delayed start date because of that. And it's not just Northern, I've heard of other deaneries doing it as well. Training history, so you wouldn't fill this out if you were going straight from foundation or F3, because this is for either trainees who are applying for a different specialty or trainees who are applying and going to transfer deanery. The less than full-time bit comes in under part 2. So you need a well-rounded reason. You do need to put something in that blank space box to say why you want to go less than full-time. So you can put work-life balance, well-being. If you've got interests outside of medicine, you can put those in there as well. I've sent you a link to, and the slides are available on the Found Place app as well, and I'll send them around the trust too. I've sent you a link for the special circumstances, because there are some people who will be eligible to say that they need to be based in a certain deanery for their training, and that I've listed there the things that come under that, so you can have a look at that if you think you might be eligible. Deferral, so remember, only statutory. You can tick for a deferral for this and then put in the date that you would finish. ACF candidates, it will ask you, are you an ACF candidate? Yes. And then it will say, do you want to go through this as an ACF candidate only, or as an ACF candidate and a specialty trainee candidate? Now let me just go through this with you. You might be like, I want to do an ACF in ophthalmology, and if I don't get it, I'm going to take an F3 and I'm not going to start training in ophthalmology. So you can go through it. You apply for an ACF Northern Ophthalmology. You apply for ophthalmology specialty training. You go through the ophthalmology interview, and you will only be marked against those benchmark scores. So you won't be ranked. Nobody will mark your interview answers. You will just get a tick box, yes, pass benchmark. And then you'll have an ACF offer at the end of it, or you won't. You might be like, right, I'm going to apply for ophthalmology ACF in Northern, but if I don't get it, I'm going to start ophthalmology training. So you go through as an ACF candidate and as a specialty trainee candidate, which means at the end you come out with 2 job offers. You've either got the ACF offer there, and then you've got an ophthalmology training post. Personally, I think it's always safer to go through as both. It keeps the option open in case you decide you want to do specialty. And also, if you are going to take an F3, it will give you an idea of where you've ranked for specialty training. So, you might do, God forbid, worst case scenario, but you might do worse than what you thought you were going to do. And then you'd be like, right, actually, during that F3, not only am I going to develop my academic portfolio for the ACF, but also I'm going to just work on what I can do to up it for prep for the specialty training too. The MSRA, so GP at the moment have something in place where if you apply for GP, sit the MSRA, decline the GP post, and then you apply again within the next 12 months, you can tick a box in the application form to say that you want to transfer your MSRA score from the previous year. It's only valid for a year, and that might not be available if specialty interviews change. And let me just come back on screen so I can talk you through something. At the moment, so you know that prior to the pandemic, it was face-to-face interviews. And then when the pandemic hit, we all went to online interviews. I told you in the F1 presentation that there was some investment in a, what do you call it, program called Cubicon. So basically it was an online thing that allowed you to do panel interviews. So different panel interviews online. At the minute it's Teams and it's just one panel. They piloted it last year. Didn't go brilliantly with some of the specialties that they piloted it with. So I'm not sure if all of the specialties will take that on. I know for sure that some of them are using Teams again this year. There is a secret list of specialties who are pushing to go back to face-to-face. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to make a guess that anaesthetics might be one that goes face-to-face interviews this year. We'll wait and see when the applications open. I'd also make a guess that I know that the ones that had practical stations are pushing for face-to-face, which was neurosurgery and cardiothoracic, so maybe they will as well. But we'll see. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, GP MSRA score. So we'll see what happens in the future. If GP does bring back its interview, and I don't think it will for this year because we normally run a GP assessment centre and we haven't been asked to prep for that. So I don't think it will be this year. But if it does in the future, they may take the option away to allow you to transfer that MSRA score because it might go back to interviews. Jump back into this. References. So you need 3 references. You have to include your ES or your CS from foundation. If you're doing an F3, you will need to include somebody who's overseeing your work during that. For academic, you can go back actually more than 2 years and go to a lecturer for your academic reference. The references are not taken into account in any part of assessment. They aren't even contacted until you've been given a job offer. And then the references will be like a HR reference, so it will be around things that your referee would be able to see on ESR. So it would be things like how many days sickness have they had? Would you consider, was there any disciplinary options or any complaints or anything while they were under you, being supervised by you? Would you consider them to be a good employee? It's things like that. It's nothing to do with your clinical skills or anything like that. You've got fitness to practice, which is just yes or no tick boxes. If you do tick yes for anything, then you will need to send them details through an email to HR. This is the only place where you will attach anything to the application forms. So they will ask for a copy of your medical degree to be scanned and attached to the application form, and then also your foundation competencies. If you're in F2, don't worry about that. You can't attach it yet, you haven't finished. But if you're in F3, you'll need to do that. And then we've got this section where they will shortlist. Now, for some specialties, this will be blank. So at the moment, GP and psych are just using the MSRA test, and you get a job offer just based on your MSRA score. So this part will be blank for those 2 specialties. And it will have something at the top saying, these 2 have been left blank on purpose, in case you think that it's an error with your computer not loading the screen. For the rest of them, there will be some form of shortlisting. So this is how they shortlisted last year. I was really interested to see what medicine said in the webinar last night because I was wondering whether or not they were going to bring in the MSRA test. They're not. That's been confirmed. And it's unlikely that they'll bring it in the future. But at the moment for medicine, you complete a self-assessment based on your achievements, your teaching, audits, presentations, and you enter your score into the application form. That score is then used for shortlisting, but at no point do they verify that score, so nobody gets your portfolio, goes through it and verifies it. You're told as an IMT candidate to have evidence ready just in case you're asked to produce it in an audit. But I don't know anybody who's been asked to produce their medicine portfolio to be checked who I've dealt with. So I'm not sure how much of a cross-section they're using to do that. But it leaves room for error. That's my worry with it. There are some people who, I don't think anybody would overscore themselves in every single category, but I just worry that there are situations where people genuinely are overscoring themselves. So, I get a lot of people who go to me, I'm not sure about whether this is classed as regional or whether it's classed as local, and they may mark it up. if it was being verified, that point would be taken off them, but because it's not, they get you through for shortlisting when maybe they wouldn't have originally, I don't know. But actually, when you look at the figures, medicine interviews a massive proportion of the people who apply. So I think last year you only had to score 8 to be able to get shortlisted, which is, most of the foundation doctors that I speak to do score more than 8, so we'll probably get an interview. Public Health has its own version of the SGT test because they are non-clinical candidates applying as well. So it's a non-medical one. So the application form might look like this. This is the ACF one. So you might get a blank space and then how do you meet the person's specification? You need to find the person's specification. The specialty ones are quite easy. They're all the same skills, to be honest. This is the one from one of the general, I think it's medicine. And we did this in F1, remember, when we went through what are the soft skills and which ones have I got. You might find that it's split into different sections like this. So you'll have, tell us about your teaching, and you'll just have 200 word count. Tell us about your audit, tell us about your presentations, and it's not necessarily that you're going through a tick box. You might just get it where it's drop down menu. So surgery will it has its self-scoring criteria there. I'm sure you've seen it if you're applying for surgery. And then you just select what you think. They won't give you any advice. If you've got a piece of evidence and you're not sure what category or if it counts towards something, I can give my opinion on it, but you'll never get that from recruitment. They won't give advice because part of the whole thing with a self-assessment is that you're able to assess yourself. So they won't do individual guidance around evidence and what counts towards what. With surgery and with some of the other ones, if there is a drop down menu, there's normally a white space box underneath as well where you can talk about other things. So you can only claim for one piece of evidence per category. But if you had something else, you could put that in the white space and then they could talk about that in the interview with you. Or you might just have a tick box. Oh, sorry, you can't see that very well on this screen, which is radiology. I think that one comes from. Just a bit of advice if you do have to do a self-assessment. So it is one piece of evidence per category. You can't add up scores. So you're looking at whatever you're going to get your highest score from. Don't worry about it if you're, this is, what is it? Work smart, not hard, something like that. This is a point thing to get you through for the interview. You need to be a bit clever with this. A little order that you do in a department, which didn't take much time and maybe isn't relevant to what you're going to, and then it's easily reordered. It's a quick and easy fix to get you high points. And then maybe you're working on an audit which isn't complete, so you can't claim points for it, but it's massive and it's really relevant and shows commitment to specialty. And then you talk about that one in the interview, but you point score and get the highest points from the little one that you did in the department. So there's always the opportunity to talk about extra things in the interview. You don't put any of your evidence in the application form. The way that it works is you complete the form, you then submit it. You will then be sent an email with the login details for a portal. You'll go into the portal, upload your evidence, and then that will be sent for verification, unless it's medicine where you don't upload anything. For some of the specialties, that will be done straight away so that you'll enter it with the November deadline, and then in the December you'll be asked to upload to the portal. For some of the specialties, they'll ask you to sit the MSRA test first in the January. So ophthalmology and surgery will ask you to do that, and then the portal will open in the February. Let me see. I can't stress this enough. All of your evidence that you are claiming points for must be completed, signed off, done by the application deadline, not the portal deadline. There was a load of people last year who thought that, oh look, the portal deadline's at the end of December. I'm doing a conference in the end of November. I'll be able to claim that. And they ended up having points taken off them. It is not the portal deadline that everything has to be done by. It's the application deadline. Even if the interview and stuff is until later on, it is that November deadline, which is the black and white sign-off date for everything. A few common mistakes. So if you are if you are putting anything in your portfolio which has a consultant, bear with me, I'm plugging in my laptop which is about to die. There we go. If you're putting anything in there which a consultant has signed off, you need to make sure you have the GMC number on there. If you're presenting anything, you must include the slides. I've had people have points taken off them because of that. Make sure that you've got dates clearly shown on there. So if it's saying leadership role for 6 months, you've got to have the dates on there. If it's saying that you need to have taught over a 3-month period, you clearly need a 3-month date on there so that they can say it. I'll go through what evidence you can use, but this isn't, this isn't all of it. You can use other things as well. This is just things that have come up from the guidance and that people have used in the past. So any qualifications is easy. It's certificates. You attach those, you scan those and attach those. Any prizes, just be careful with the prizes. If the specialty is saying you can only claim points if you were in the top 20% of your undergraduate degree, you need something from the university that says this score was in the top 20% for that year. You can't just put your scores in and then, that's it. And it just needs to be an email with a signature, or even a headed email will be better, where it says that you were in the top whatever percentage they're asking for. Presentations. So we need proof of presentation. That can be an invitation to go and present, it can be a certificate. You have to attach the slides from the presentation. You could have a supporting statement from someone who watched you present it. If it's a poster, you can put a copy of the poster in there as well. Publications, this one's a bit easier. There's a pro forma on ORIAL that you complete for a publication. So you put all the details into the pro forma and then you would attach the publication. If it's short and abstract, you just put that in. If it's bigger, if it's a big research publication, or if it's like a chapter in a book or something, just put the front page of it on. Teaching. So you will get a couple of points for developing the clinical teaching evidence, but you have to have a reflection with it as well. If you're regularly teaching on something, you need to show something from who you were teaching it for. So if it's MedEd or if it's the university, something from them to say this person taught across these dates. You want something about what sessions it was and the objectives to it, any slides that you used, and then you want to collect feedback from the group. So evaluation forms, collect them, summarise them, put them into one document, sign it off by whoever's running the course, or MedEd, whoever's overseeing it, to say this is a true representation, and then put that in. If you've produced a brand new teaching programme, then just make sure that you've got the full timetable of the teaching and it links all of the sessions. So it isn't just showing the sessions that you taught on, but you've got the sessions that other people taught on as well, and then everything else that I've just discussed from evidence of teaching. Teaching qualifications is easy. It's a certificate. For the small point, there's an e-learning for healthcare module that you can do that will get you a point. The rest of them are the postgrads. Audit, check the specialty. So some of them will be like, I want one cycle of an audit fully completed and presented for full points. Some of them will be like, I want a re-audit done. Some of them will say multiple cycles of an audit. Some of them will want a presentation at either a local, a national or an international level. Some of them will want the presentation to be of the re-audit, not the original audit. So we'll check the specialty. Once you've got that, then you put this in. So you want a copy of the audit or the QIP, a summary of your role, and then signed off by the supervisor or whoever's supervising you. Some of them have a form that you can complete. So medicine's not going to ask you for it, but if it did, there's a QuipAct form that you can use. And then you want proof of presentation if that's included in those points. So again, slides, certificates, invitations to present. Leadership. So most of the specialties now will accept non-clinical. There's only a couple that are wanting it to be linked to your medical role. So you want a leadership role that you've done for 6 months that's made a difference. That can be med societies, doctors' mess, reps for the trusts. It can be linked with charities, with sports or hobbies, anything like that. We want something that shows the role. So if it was a job role, you've got a job description or a contract of employment. If it was something less formal, you can get something on headed email or signatory email from the universities or med societies or organisations. The dates need to be on there as well to show how long you've done it for. And then your positive impact can be anything from sort of feedback from somebody who's worked with you. If it was an event that you put on, you can use an evaluation from the event. It can be a reflection as well that you can write, or a reflection that somebody else can, or not a supporting statement from somebody else, or a reflection that you've wrote. And then we've got a blank slide because I haven't put anything in there. This should be, right, so I should have preferences on here. Let me just talk you through. So the next section of the application form will be on preferencing, but it will be blanked out in the application form. You won't do it when you first complete the application. At some point, and it's normally around about January, February time, they'll come back to you and say preferencing is now open, and you can go into the application form and you can preference. If it's some of the specialties will do like deaneries. So medicine will do what's your top 4 deaneries, and then you rank within those deaneries the jobs. Some of them will just be like, these are all of the jobs across the whole of the country, rank them, which is what surgery does. And then that's it, that's the form, you sign it off and it's done. So that's the specialty application form. I'm going to be around during the time when people are applying. I always make sure that I keep a couple of days admin space to be able to answer people, and I'm always on email. Don't try and ring me, you'll never get hold of us. I'm never in one place. So just email us. I'll keep an eye out for anything that's urgent and I'll pull through and I'll reply to it as fast as I can. But I'm there for you if you need any help with any of it. Right, let's do F3 ones then. So I'm not going to go through all of the F3 jobs because we already did that. We covered these ones when we did the F1 presentation. The teaching fellow one I'm just going to look at first, because what I'm finding is, because a lot of people are doing F3, like in the past, it wasn't that competitive to get a teaching fellow. Normally teaching fellows were, you know, the consultant would tell somebody about it, would go on NHS jobs, they would apply, they'd be one of the only ones that applied and they'd get it. And there would be a lot of teaching fellows which weren't filled, and people were like, do you want to do a teaching fellow? We've tried to advertise, we haven't got it. Different times now. Everyone, I think people think if I need a portfolio building year, I'm going to do a teaching fellow, and that's all they think of. So it's become a lot more competitive. So I want to go through that just a little bit on its own first. Oriel, specialty training, NHS jobs, all of the F3 roles. So the teaching fellows are at ST1 level. This is what, let me bring this up. This is what they look like. Now in previous years, they didn't really change. So I could pretty much tell you, this is what this trust got, this is what this trust got. But now, because teaching fellows are getting quite popular, there's more and more of them appearing each year. Durham and Darlington are still doing clinical area of choice, which is quite good if you're not sure, you know, if you're not seeing a lot of teaching fellows come through in something that you're interested in, it will be worth putting in an application form for them and then saying, this is where I want my clinical area to be. Gatesheads change a lot. So I've put in, this is some of the ones that have come over across the last few years. Newcastle's don't change that much. Some of the medicine ones do, and that's just because of, you know, if a teaching fellow stays on for another year, there isn't enough teaching for both of them. If you're seeing a ratio there, the first one is clinical practice and the second one is teaching. What was happening was some of the trusts were being a little bit sneaky, and they were advertising their teaching fellows really early in the year and then telling the F2s who were interested in them, because you can't informally give a teaching fellow. It has to go through NHS jobs because it's got funding attached to it from the university, so it has to go through open competition. And they were advertising really early. They haven't in previous years because they were shooting themselves in the foot with it. They were giving people teaching fellows. Those people were then getting specialty training, and then they were ditching the teaching fellow, and the trust was having to go back out and re-advertise it. I would probably say, just to be on the safe side, and in case the trusts do that again this year, to get yourself set up with a search on NHS jobs from November. That'll cover all of them. I don't expect many to do that. I think it will be January, February when most of them come out. These are the other ones. So we've got Cumbria's clinical area of choice as well. You'll see some of them are linked to Newcastle Uni, and some of them are linked to Sunderland, and some of them are linked to UCLan as well over in the northwest. North Tees doesn't change that much. They're the same year on year. Northumbria's does change a bit. South Tees is pretty standard, and most of those are 70-30 split. And South Tyneside and Sunderland normally stays the same, although the two bottom ones there can be tailored. I am going to send these slides out so you can have a good look through them once you finish the presentation. We've got some psych ones as well. So in the north it is badged as a teaching fellow. We've got 3 in North East and 1 in Cumbria. In the south of the region though, It's advertised as a clinical fellow because it can be either a postgrad in med-ed or in clinical research. So you would just have to slightly change the search term on NHS Jobs to find that. This is what NHS Jobs looks like. So this is the brand new NHS Jobs website, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's worse than the old one. I've sent multiple emails to them to say they need to add things in from the old one that they've missed off this one. So far, the search facility. So if you know you want a teaching fellow and that's it, you would put teaching fellow and then just put North East. It's easier. If you put South Tyneside or if you put Newcastle, I just don't trust that it's going to pull all of them through. I know it does for North East. So you would put that in. You would search on it and then it would say, do you want to save this search? You need to set up a new profile. Nothing's moved over from the old NHS Jobs. So set up a new profile and then it will say, do you want to save this search? You save it and then it says, I'll come back on when I'm talking to you for this. Then it says, do you want an email alert? And it'll say weekly or daily email alert. This is where I'm getting mine from. And I'll send them through when I see them. But, because I could be ill or, God forbid, I had a holiday, I might not be around sometimes. So it's worth you having this set up as a backup anyway, just in case. My search that I've got on is just fellow, because I want the teaching fellows and the clinical fellows to come through. I've also got one on Trust Doctor for all of the F3 roles as well. And the thing with the teaching fellows, what I wanted to show you was, so I think what's happening is people apply for a teaching fellow, they maybe don't get it because it's competitive, and then they're like, I didn't get a teaching fellow, I'm going to look for a trust grade. I cannot stress, I am seeing so many teaching fellows being re-advertised. So I wanted to take a screenshot to show you. Look at these job roles that were advertised. Look at the closing dates on those. So we've got a teaching fellow at Northumbria, 100%. A teaching fellow obs and gynae at Durham and Darlington. A surgical fellow teaching fellow at Newcastle, which is like gold dust in the beginning of the year. And a teaching fellow in obs and gynae at Newcastle. All of those closing dates are July. That job starts in August. I would have thought by this point of July of F2, most people will have sorted what they want to do for their F3 year. So it may be that you didn't get a teaching fellow, you've gone and got yourself a trust grade, and then actually if you keep your search on, you might see the teaching fellow that you wanted coming back round, then you can reapply for that and just ditch the trust grade if you really want to do teaching. Because it gets you the postgraduate certificate fully funded, doesn't it? So if that's what you wanted to do, it would make sense to do it that way and take it up. So just don't rule it out. They keep coming back around. The one from Newcastle, like these are not brand new posts. These are posts that somebody was given, and then they've probably found out that their visas to Australia have come through, and they've ditched them. And they're coming back up for advert to try and fill them. Otherwise, they lose the funding for the postgrad, which is a bit of a waste. Now, the way that NHS Jobs shortlists is very, very specific. And this is the same for any non-medical jobs. So, if you were going to go for something like a Band 6 or a Band 7 non-clinical role in like Health Education England or NHS England, they shortlist this way. Universities shortlist this way. So if you're going for any research assistant or associate jobs at the unis or anything else at the uni, this is the way that they shortlist. Government jobs, education jobs, council jobs, all of them shortlist this, how I'm going to show you now. And it's so particular that I really need to kind of get this across to you, that if you're going to be applying for something that's competitive, this is the way that you need to do it. So the application form is just all of your personal details, your personal details, your employment history, your qualifications, your training, all of that. And then this is what you come up with. I'm going to bring this full screen so you can see it. I wonder if you can see me through the background if I do that. No? There we go. So this is 1,500 words, blank statement, and it says in this section you need to demonstrate that you've read the published person specification and how you meet the essential and where relevant desirable criteria for this post if it hasn't been fully covered in a different section. So first of all, we need to find the person specification for the job. The person specification person specification is hard to find straight off. So this is the job advert for the teaching fellow at Northumbria. Now, if you look at that support and documents that's underneath there with the blue linked documents under it, that first one there that says teaching fellow PDF, if you open, I feel like I'm in the gap, hang on. If you open that, that is a PDF document which has information about Northumbria's trust. It has the board of Northumbria. It has information about the region of Northumbria, about the countryside and the beaches and what it's like to live there. It has the job description for the teaching fellow, which you probably already know because you know what a teaching fellow does. On the last page, which is page 11 of that document, you'll find the person specification. So it's not easy to find, it's quite hidden. Sometimes you might find that it's separate and it'll have job description, then it'll have another linked document with PS next to it, which is the person spec. So if we go and find the person spec, this is what it looks like. Let me bring you in here. You've got your essential criteria and your desirable criteria. Now I have taken out all of the bits that are already in the application form somewhere else. So I've taken out the qualifications because you've already put those in somewhere. I've taken out the experience because you've already put that you've worked as a foundation doctor. So what happens is your 1,500 words is sent to the person who's been allocated as a shortlister. Now that could be a consultant, it could be someone from MedEd, it could be a HR person who's been trained in shortlisting. It's anonymised. None of the rest of the application form goes with it. So it's just the 1,500 words. And what the HR person does is they have a sheet in front of them that has the things from the person spec on it, and they have a score of 4 attached to it. So they will go to the first thing that's on that person spec. That first thing on there is experience of developing and delivering undergraduate teaching. They will scan through your 1,500 words looking for where is the teaching, where's the example. If there's nothing in there, 0. If it talks about the fact that they've done teaching and it gives some examples of it, then they'll get 4 points. And then they'll move on to the next one. Understanding of clinical governance and readiness to accept and not acknowledge the responsibilities it implies. So they will go straight through your 1,500 words. Where is that? Again, score out of 4. If you put anything else in that application form that isn't related to one of those points on the person spec, it's irrelevant. It's a waste of a word count. So if you've got, I'm always interested in teaching, I'm passionate about doing this, my career goal is to do blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You have to link it in with this. So I'm going to show you an example. We've got ability to work as part of a team. Now I'm going to show you an example that an F2 doctor has used to show teamwork in their application for a trust grade post. It's anonymised, you don't know who it is. So all I want you to do is read this example and then tell me what you would score it out of 4. Now, if I give you the scoring that the HR team have, think about if your score's now changed. Now, if I was with you in the room, I would be asking you what you're going to score them. I get a few people who still go 3 or 4 for this. I get most people who go 2. I'll get some who go 1, and then the odd 1 or 2 who'll go 0. I would give 0 for this example, and that's because we need a real life example of what you've done when you've worked in a team. I think what people tend to do on application forms is that they go too high level, they go too holistic. They think that because it's an application form, they need to use all of these big words and sound really professional, when really all the HR person is doing is looking for where is your example of when you've worked in a team. Now, if we think about teamwork, we're looking at things like this, if you can read them on there. When have you worked in a team? Who was the team? How did you work with them? How did you communicate with them well? How did you listen to other people's opinions? How did you include somebody who maybe didn't want to be involved in the team? How did you deal with conflict or problems that came up within that team environment? What was the result of working together? Yeah, it's these kinds of things, and the only way that you can really do that is by talking about something that has actually happened and talking through the story of what happened when you were working in that team. I'm going to show you another example now, give you a chance to read it. I'm not pausing it. I know some of you are listening to this as a recording, you can fast forward, but because it's being delivered live somewhere, I'm giving a bit of time so no one has to run down and press the pause button. So I want you to read this one and then tell me what you would score it. What are you giving it? Now, I have some people who fall into the trap of still going big, 3 or 4. Some people will go 2. Some people will still go 0 and 1. I'll probably give this a 1. And the reason is, again, if the question was, how does teamwork improve in a support in a healthcare setting, they would get 4 out of 4. It's a brilliant example. It's well written. It's nice. But it isn't giving any examples of their individual teamwork skills. It nearly goes into it. So as a shortlister, you would get excited by the fact that it goes, one team I often find myself in as part of a crash team. Here's the example. Where's the example of the crash team? And then it goes high level again. Later on, there's, for example, on call as a junior, but then there isn't anything about being on call as a junior in the team that they worked in. So what I need you to do is, when you're completing these application forms, you're going to that person's spec. Every single thing that's on there that requires an example, you do this with it. You've seen this before. It's a HR thing. I'll bring it big so someone can see it. So you can see it. This is what you need to do, and this will keep you on track as well. So the situation, I was asked to be part of the on-call team. The task was we had to work together to make sure that someone didn't die. I'm making this up on the spot. The action, I did this, somebody else did this, we included someone by doing this, we spoke to this person for their knowledge of how you do this. We had to bring somebody else in, so I called them, I communicated like this, I explained this, then they came into the team, and this is how we done it, this is how we overcome the problem, and the result, nobody died. I've made that up, but you see how it's a story about something, it's a real life example, and that's kind of what you need to do with each of them. And I think this just supports you later on for your interview as well, because if you do this in the application form, when you go for the interview, you can have, even they'll often say to you, can you tell me a bit more detail about the time you've worked as part of a team? And you can use a different example, but you can use the one that's from your application form as well and just go into way more detail about it. It helps to keep you on track with the application form, not go off on a tangent and bring it back down to that real example. You might also find, and just to kind of let you know about this, so I see loads of people, and the reason that they're not getting interviews is because of the application form, and this is the reason why, that they're not shortlisting, they're not writing it in this style of being able to then have it go through a shortlisting process. I've seen people who've done jobs, not medics, but people who've done jobs in a temporary job role. So they've been doing that actual job for 2 years and then it comes up as a permanent contract. They apply for it thinking this is just a tick box exercise because I've done it and I'm good at the job. It goes through NHS Jobs, it goes to a central HR person who doesn't know them, who then signs it, who then they haven't wrote it properly, so they don't end up getting shortlisted. And then that person feels terrible and thinks, well, was I ever wanted in this job? And I'm like, yes, you were. You've just done the application wrong. I once had one of the doctors not shortlisted for a job that we would have expected them to be. The application was all right. And I was like, send through your application so I can have a look at it. And it was the fact that one of the essential criteria on the job that they were applying to for, I think it was a trust grade, was GCSE grade C and then medical degree and all this. And then they'd put their medical degree, but they hadn't put that in. And I was, because they were like, well, I've done a medical degree. Why on earth would I need to put a GCSE grade C in there or above? And I was like, yeah, because it's gone through a shortlisting system and all they've done is have they got GCSE grade C? No, ineligible. It's not on the application form. So it's very finicky what you have to do for each part. What I would say is if you're finding that you're applying for things and you think you should be getting interviews and you're not, then potentially send over one of your application forms so I can have a look at it against the person spec. I'm also happy to do that for people who are going for jobs. If you want me to check it, I won't change anything. I'll just go through it from a shortlister's point of view. But obviously give me enough time to be able to have a look at it. Don't do it right before the deadline because I'm busy a lot of the week, so I need to be able to fit that in. Yeah, I'm happy to do it as well if you haven't got the job and then you want me to look at it so that it'll help you for future applications. You might find that some of the person specs don't have a lot on, so then people do their 1,500 words with sort of a paragraph, like this is a paragraph on teamwork, this is a paragraph on this, but you might also find that some of them are really long, and if they do, you need to be a bit clever with how you word things. So this is just an example of how you can pull a few things from the person specification into a one paragraph, or you might have to use examples of things that cover a couple of skills. So this person has pulled together quite nicely evidence of teaching, knowledge of teaching techniques and the use of SIM. She does go on and she does an extra paragraph after this, which is in more detail of the teaching session and an example of one of the teaching sessions. But I thought this was quite a good way to be able to bring it together. Don't worry if you haven't read it, I'll send it out to you. And then just to kind of let you know as well, when you go on NHS Jobs, some of them will go through NHS Jobs applications, but other ones will signpost you to Track. Track's a lot easier to do because it breaks it down more. So if I just show you this example on Track so that you can see that I'm telling you the truth about what I'm saying about these examples. This is a teaching fellow for Northumbria. It's not coming so great across on the, I'm using Prezi so that I can record, so apologies if you can't see that too great. Teaching fellow for Obs and Gynae at Northumbria will take you straight through to Track, and then in the Track application form, you can't read that at all, can you? It basically says evidence of how you meet the essential criteria, and it's got clinical experience, teamwork, teaching, organisation and time management. But then it says you've got 5,000 characters, and the guidance is give evidence of how you've gained each of the essential criteria in a situation where you've used them. So you can see that they're quite clearly saying, give us a real life example of when you've used this skill or these skills. The rest of the jobs, it kind of depends on the department, what the job entails. The clinical fellows, which have research attached to them, if it's a post-grad, it has to go through NHS Jobs because it's got funding attached to it. But you will find that some of the clinical fellows are just department audits and things like that are counted as the research. The trust grades, like if a consultant has advertised a post on NHS Jobs and it hasn't been recruited to in the past, then they can bypass NHS Jobs because it's a gap in their rota and they can offer it informally. So there's a few things that you need to do. Keep an eye on that website for clinical fellows and trust grades, but also you probably need to do some legwork here and go and contact places, let consultants know that you want to go and work on their departments and ask them how do they advertise, when do they advertise, what posts have they got. Because it could be that they have an informal chat with you and they can offer you a post for a trust grade for sure, but even for a clinical fellow sometimes. without you having to go through any form of applications or interview. The trusts have kind of cottoned on to the fact that F2s don't want to go into specialty training, and they're offering them opportunities to stay. So they will have a coordinator who will go around all of the departments and go, where are the gaps? What do you need trust grades? How long do you need them for? And then they'll come to the F2s at some point in the year and say, okay, do you want to stay with us? Here's some of the trust grades that we've got on offer. You can use them if you want to. These are the ones, not all trusts have them. These are the ones that I know of. I know some of those are just rota coordinators that they've given me. But at least the rota coordinators can tell you where the gaps are, and then you can go and approach the departments. You kind of want to go to the clinical lead and say, look, and I would do it through, if you haven't done any tasters, or if you haven't done, or if you have done tasters, then you can use informal shadowing on your off days. But I would do that to then go over, meet them, and try and get it so that you can have the opportunity to be able to liaise with them enough to say, okay, are there any job offers? And what I am finding is a lot of people are, because you're busy, and I know that, and it's hard to keep on track of jobs and applying for things as extra work on top of what you've already got going on. But I think sometimes the trusts take advantage of that a little bit, and they'll just be like, oh, you've done a rotation with us, we really liked you, you're a good part of the team, will you stay with us? Which is fine, that might be the best thing for you, but there's just so many opportunities out there that might be better for you, and it's worth just exploring those and keeping your options open. I'll show you some of the ones that came up. Can I go backwards? Yeah, I can. Last year, which are quite cool jobs. This is just a selection. There was loads of them, and if you had the Found Your Place app, you will have seen some of them coming through. That psych one's quite cool. That's the NTW, a clinical fellow in neurological rehab. It's quite good. The Sunderland South Tyneside trust grade, where you went around different types of peds, was really good for somebody who was considering peds, especially because it included peds emergency medicine as well, which allowed you to see, well, is it peds or is it emergency medicine that I want to go down? Cumbria, clinical fellow in emergency medicine with a special interest in mountain medicine. I mean, who's got that on their CV? Look at the one at South Tees as trust doctor in cardiothoracic. A lot of people don't think that they exist. It came out. Northumbria had a one with 6 weeks in Tanzania as part of a research fellow that they had. So there's just so many really good opportunities out there. Don't feel as if you just need to fall into the first trust grade that you're offered in the trust. And I think, well, one of the things that you can do is you can go on the Locum Bank as well, and then that will show you where the gaps are. You can do that from F2, so you could go on and you could see where the gaps are, and if you could see a regular gap coming up, you can then go and approach that department. It's about how you use your F3. So if you're going for something like GP, where they're using the MSRA, if they go back to interviews, it was never an interview panel, it was a role play for communication, so there was no chance for you to ever have to sell yourself. So if it's something like that, you don't need to do trust grade necessarily for any portfolio building opportunities. You can do whatever you want. Some people are like, right, I need a portfolio building trust grade because I need audit or I need teaching. So I'll take that until the November, because then I'm putting my application form in, but then I'll quit that job and I'll locum the rest of the year because that gets me more money. Or some people will trust grade all the way till the March when they've got the job offer, and then they'll quit the trust grade after that because they know they've got their specialty place and they'll go off and do whatever they want with a bit of locum in. I know some people get frustrated at the fact that they have to take portfolio building when they would have done locum, but I've even had people who've negotiated a part-time trust grade till the November with locum and then done it that way. So just make it work for you, however it is. If you are going to locum, there are situations where you can be offered a short-term locum contract. So if there is a department where they've got a gap, they know they've got loads of gaps, they're never going to have anyone come along and do it as a trust grade. They will say, okay, we'll give you a 3-month locum contract here, or a 6, sometimes. It's normally 3 months and then continued for 3 months, up to a 6-month locum contract, which just gives you a bit of stability knowing that the job's there. But it's how you work it, it's up to you. So, questions. You are going to have I'm just going to save my actual, the new email, that's good. This is the, don't worry about it if you send me an email through the He one, it's going to bounce through to this new NHSnet one for a while. But this is my email. You can ask me any questions. That's what I'm here for the rest of foundation. So if stuff comes up as you go along the way, just email us. It's the fastest way to get an answer. I'll be coming in and I'll be doing a session with you on interview prep. If I haven't already, sorry if you're watching this as a recording later on. So you will see me again for the interview one, and then again I'll record that, and that will be available on the app if you don't get the chance to come and see me in person. The one-to-ones are still available. They are 30 minutes over the phone or on Teams, completely confidential, a chance for you to just ask what you want. I am super busy. It is a bit of a backlog of about a month, I think, wait for a one-to-one. Look, don't worry about it. It's just the time of the year. I have to get everybody, September now, I have to get everybody through the teaching sessions on applications and interview prep before you go for them by Christmas. Come January, my diary's got loads of flexibility. So for the people who are doing F3s and maybe it's a non-urgent, don't worry about it. You don't have to book in. There'll be loads of time later on to do that. And if you don't see me, and you do decide to go and do an F3, just keep the app so that you get all of the updates about what's going on in the future if and when you decide to apply. That's great. Thank you very much. I hope it's been helpful, and you know where I am if you need any help. Thank you. Bye.